Welcome back, everybody, to the Core Growth Show. I am joined by an amazing lady, Michelle Jones, who is the founder of Fresh Approach Coaching. She's a transition and resilience coach, and she's over 20 years experience within the industry and working within business as well. She has a lot to share here. She's her own personal story as well to share, and I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people. So first and foremost, Michelle, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Gary, for asking me to be on the podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
Yeah, brilliant. And we talk about resilience. We talk about continuing on. This is our second approach to this because we were working out a few technical difficulties. So it's brilliant that you were able to. We got another date in the diary. So let's start off. What is a transition, transition and resilience coaching, and what is it that you do at Fresh Approach Coaching?
Well, it's funny you say about transactions because I do a lot of work on something called transactional analysis. So what we're doing right now is a transaction. Every interaction you have with somebody is called a transaction. So funny that you accidentally, now I can't speak, accidentally mix
I
up
thought you were
the
saying,
words.
funny you butchered that. I was like, yeah, I did actually.
It makes you feel a bit better.
Yeah.
So a transitions and resilience coach, I suppose you could say I'm a life coach, but ultimately with my previous experience through business career and then my own personal health journey as well, it made me decide I think I really want to focus on people who are going through a transition or have been through a transition in their life or their career. And that might be going through a big health journey like I had, maybe getting divorced, being made redundant, or perhaps it's the case of you want to leave your corporate job and set up a business. That's a big transition. And what can really support and help somebody through that is to gain clarity on the steps they need to take through that and understand where it is that they want to get to. And you draw upon the resilience that you have lived, your lived experience to help you get through that. And that's what I do. I'm someone's thinking partner. I help guide them through that process and gain that space and that clarity that you might not otherwise get.
Brilliant. And you mentioned there too, because you had a lot of your own transitions. And we want to start off just with your own personal health journey. You just want to explain that and what you went through as well.
Sure, absolutely. And I don't want to offend anyone that might be listening. I will be very matter of fact about what I'm going to talk about, which is a cancer diagnosis journey and treatment. So I just want to put that out there. It's not that I don't have emotion tied to it. I've done a lot of work to get through going through that experience. So just want to caveat that before I begin. I was diagnosed in 2024 with a very rare head and neck cancer. And I personally believe that was a consequence of stress following the sudden death of my mother. I lost her very suddenly, very unexpectedly, and began to feel ill shortly thereafter. Sore throat, cough, and it just wouldn't go away. So I had a tumour in my right tonsil, which grew to the size of a potato. Nobody knew what it was until I saw a GP one day. He knew straight away. He had seen it before. Very, very rare to present in a woman who was 40 at the time. And in a woman, it's usually men who are retired that get that type of cancer. That's what the statistics show anyway. Following that, I had to go through 7 weeks of intensive radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and then went through sort of 18-month recovery period. I'm still dealing with some of the side effects of that treatment, but thankfully the cancer has gone, which I'm delighted about. And through that process and that journey, I've learned an awful lot about resilience, how to really make the most out of the challenges and the bad times, so that you know what you want for the future and how to get that.
Brilliant. And well done on all that, because not only, I think the big thing I would love to touch on a bit more is the physicals. First of all, you say you get the side effects, but will you agree that you got to go through a psychological and mental process? And you talked at the start, you said, look, you've taken emotion away from that. Is that right? Like, how did you do that? And was that an instant thing, or is that something took a while and you're constantly still doing?
I was very fortunate going into treatment that I had done a little bit of coaching and training on it. Had been doing more mentorship rather than pure coaching, but I knew different techniques to regulate your nervous system, to regulate emotion, and to face challenges. And that was through things like breath work, visualization, and even music. I would say when I went in that radiotherapy machine, I had to wear a big mask right over the top of my head to the top of my chest, and it was clipped in, very claustrophobic. And I had techniques to get me through that every day for 20 minutes. And I would have different playlists, and they would mean different songs, would mean different things, and visualizing myself somewhere else. I was very fortunate I had those techniques to get through that because it was absolutely horrendous. And if I hadn't had that, I don't know if I would have coped in the way that I had.
So essentially, during your treatment, you were you covered? Was it darkness? Was it you? Were you in the machine, or what way was that working then?
Yeah, so you lie on a table, you get this mask clipped in all around your head, around your shoulders, so you can't physically move. It's very important that you can stay still because you can't even be a millimeter out with the radiotherapy. And then you get raised up on a table, a big robot spins around you for 20 minutes with obviously the lasers and what have you. So it's a very claustrophobic and scary experience. Some people would be absolutely fine with that. But for me, it was just you weren't physically able to move, lick your lips. It was hard to swallow. Like even if you had an itchy nose, you couldn't move your hands or your arms. The only thing I was able to do in terms of movement was wiggle my fingers and wiggle my toes. And sometimes what I would do is just wiggle my fingers and toes to the beat of the music.
Hmm.
Really simple but effective things because then I could take my mind somewhere else and be somewhere else for those 20 minutes.
Brilliant. That's amazing, and then even that technique of music, because like I've followed a lot to obviously we lost Glenn Hansard there recently. It was a
Mm.
motorbike accident, and going through all his music again and rewatching that, but how his music connected so many people and listening to the stories of where they were at that time, and they used it. And it is one thing you will feel with a lot of people. They go journal and manifest, but I would listen to music now sometimes when I'm journaling, again, just to
Mhm.
kind of take me away from a noise, but really using music. Would you do that a lot with your clients, or is that just you personally that you that no, this worked for me, or is it a technique you would say to other people, look, try this out?
Everybody's different, Gary. It really depends on how that person's presenting. The difference with coaching is that I don't give people the answers unless they're specifically seeking them out and asking me directly because, I'm of the thought that, the brain that has the problem has the solution. And I think it's more effective if you can come up with a solution yourself. But having said that, if someone I work with needs different techniques, whether that be coaching techniques or techniques I've just used for myself, absolutely, I would share them. One thing I found that was really important during this big transition in my life was community, and I set up a WhatsApp community. uh, I had different groups for different things. So on a Tuesday, I would have chemo, and I had a group called Chemo Tuesday. So people would send gifts, jokes, playlists, different things. I had different groups for different things, and that community helped me get through. That was one of my ways of coping. But with the music, I would have every week I'd have a different theme. One week I had 80s week where I had friends help put together an 80s playlist. So when I was listening to that music, I knew my friends had chosen or family had chosen some of those tracks. When I had a boy band, girl band week, I had Spice Girls and the Backstreet Boys, like bring me back to when I was
Yeah.
like a teen. And they all conjure up really good emotions and memories and thoughts. And I think music has the power to transport you to somewhere totally different. And if that's something that I think a client would benefit from, absolutely, that would be a suggestion. But more often or not, when I'm dealing with people and helping them think clearly about what they can do to help them with their situation, they often have the answers themselves.
Yeah, yeah, you're just there to guide, and I love that. And I probably even take it gives me another level of respect for you, because if you're listening to that music and you can't move, that is unbelievable that you can lie there still. I'd be looking to bounce away and dance away to, especially if it was a classic dance 90s or something like that. I'd be all over the place. Uh, but that's amazing to share, and I think the fact now that you're taking that and you're living through a lived experience, but you know that's your experience. It's a experience. It's not the experience that is going to help
Mhm.
everybody else. And I think what some people do when they hear thing about improving their mindset, improving how they feel, they're like, oh, this person does this, I need to do this. And this is where somebody like yourself who comes in and explains, look, this is what's happening in the body, this is what's happening in the brain. You may react well to music, you may react well to just walking in nature, etc., to help you with your transition.
Mhm.
And you're
Mhm.
living that lived experience. So, and I love that idea of the community with the WhatsApp. Was that just family, friends? Within that, was that just a close network that you had, or how did you decide on those people?
If you ever go through a bad experience, and I'm sure anyone who's listening that has gone through a bad experience, whatever that might look like, you get so sick of repeating yourself and all the WhatsApps coming through and having to say the same thing over and over and over again. I thought to myself, look, I can't replay this bad, sad story over and over. What's the latest from the doctors? What are they going to do now? You know, it just was too much for me. It was overwhelming. So I thought to myself, what could I do where I just have to send one message, everybody gets the same response. And then if I'm up to it, I can do individual messages, but just that everyone is aware that I won't have the headspace or the capacity because radiotherapy makes you extremely tired. You sleep quite a lot. So for me, it was just about protecting my own sanity, I suppose. You know, it's a bit like, have you ever been to a wake and the person who's grieving that they've lost someone, every time someone new comes into the house, they replay the story of how that person passed away. And they maybe do that 10, 15 times a day up until the funeral. I imagine what that's doing to that person, constantly replaying that over and over and over again. So I knew that wouldn't work for me. That wouldn't be helpful. And that's why I created the WhatsApp group as a focus for everybody else. And also, people always say, oh, let me know if there's anything I can do. That's the worst thing you can say to somebody. Absolutely. Because you're putting the responsibility onto them to tell you how they can help you. If you think of something that might help somebody, just do it. Don't ask.
Yeah.
That might be showing up with a meal or sending a card, or you get really cold when you do things like chemo. So getting them a blanket and a hot water bottle for the hospital. So it gave me um the opportunity to give people jobs to do, whether that be, right, this week I want people to put together a playlist for me or send me some jokes in my Chemo Tuesday group. So for me, it was just about, I couldn't control the cancer, I couldn't control the treatment, but I could control how I communicated with everybody, and that was part of the reason why I did that.
Yeah, brilliant. And like as you said, your main reason was to try and give you energy, your space, your energy. But the
Mhm.
byproduct of it was everybody else felt belonged. Everybody felt part of your journey.
Yes.
The people that you loved, the people that you supported were there. And I'm sure by the sounds of it, it turned into, well, this is a very challenging time for me, but let's bring in a bit of humor with some gifts
Mhm.
and the stories of, oh, do you remember this song when we played this when we were here, or this reminds me of that. That's beautiful. And I love the fact that it was the right reason for you to do it, and then the byproduct
Yeah.
that came. So that's a quite it's a lovely technique, actually. I think that I'd never really thought it was. I obviously set up community groups for like PE in schools and teachers, and it's a nice wee way because they feel lonely because they're in a school on their own, and I'm sharing articles and sharing stuff, and we got that, and it's nice to do it that way. But I love the fact, the reason you were honest with the way you set it up for, and it's a very, very intelligent way to say, well, hold on a minute here, because you still care about these people, and if people send you a
Mhm.
message, you don't want to just pie it off, but you don't have the energy, the time. It's not your best use of your time and energy. So really, really powerful. I see that, really powerful. So thanks for sharing that. So that's essentially your personal journey within transition. You want to talk about now
Mhm.
your business, because you were quite successful. You in your own career. and then you took, which a lot of people are probably listening to this going, I'd love to start my own business. How did that happen? Where did that come from? And what have you learned from that?
Yeah, sure. I had quite a successful career in the tech industry in London. It was very fast paced, go, 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 go. You know, if you're successful, you're rewarded very well. But I had almost reached a point where I was near burnout. Fortunately, my husband was also from Northern Ireland, so we just decided, look, why don't we just relocate back home and make a go of things? It was during that move I worked in Belfast with an agency, and it was all going great, but it just wasn't giving me the same satisfaction anymore. And I had done a lot of workshops with clients, and there was a lot of psychology related to it as to how to improve workplace culture through the different technology that the organization I was working with provided. And before I moved, I worked alongside Google for 6 years. So, they were a great company to learn a lot of these techniques from. So I decided to retrain, started doing it on the side, and then obviously COVID happened. So throw in COVID, throw in, going through a fertility journey, having a child, a difficult pregnancy, mm, and then getting made redundant. I think we froze there, but hopefully you
No, we're
you,
all
you
good now.
caught
Yeah,
that.
we're all good.
So it was really in that redundancy and going through all of those transitions that I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for this. Got my coaching qualifications, went out on my own, was gaining a lot of traction. And then unfortunately, my mum passed away. So that kind of halted me. And then I got the cancer. And it was during the recovery period, I thought, right, is coaching what I want to do? And actually, it was. So it's time for me to take this seriously. So during my recovery period, once I was able to talk a bit more because I'd lost my voice and was very hoarse, very ill during that recovery period, when I was well enough, I signed up with an organization called Barefoot Coaching, and they work alongside the International Coaching Federation. So it meant then that I was able to get the gold standard in coaching accreditation. So I have an ICF level 2 coaching certification in business and personal coaching. It means I'm held to 8 core competencies by the ICF. I'm assessed. I have to submit recordings of my coaching, and I could be audited at any time as well. And the reason that was important for me going into business and setting things up. It's all good and well having a business account, having a business plan. But for me, if I didn't have the right credentials to help me to help other people, then just the integrity wasn't there. Coaching's not regulated. It's not a regulated industry. And that's why it was so important for me to have the gold standard globally in accreditation. And it has just been since having that and doing that, business has picked up. People want to work with me. I now do workshops in collaboration with another lady called Emma Pringles, where we combine therapy and coaching to deliver workshops all around confidence, self-doubt, and our critic, as well as doing my one-to-one work too around transitions and resilience. So I don't know what the original question was about how to go about setting up a business, but for me, it was more than I just want to try and make money and get customers. It was, this is what my purpose is. This is what I feel I've been called to do. I have a lot of experience now in life and in business. I can share that. I can empathize in a way that maybe a lot of people can't. And, and that's why, yeah, I decided from January this year to take it more seriously and relaunch Fresh Approach Coaching.
Brilliant. Well done, because there's a lot of hurdles there, and that's when I was on with a call earlier with somebody, and we're saying that, not everybody's up for entrepreneurship or starting your own business, and I believe with seeing other businesses, working with other people as well, that you have to be ready for rejection. You have to be ready to be knocked back, to knocked down straight away. And I think in today's society and then how business works as well, that you have to be able to put yourself out there, as well, even be that social media, be that thing where you have to control as best you can your personal life to that, but also knowing that people are coming after that because they want to know, like, and trust you. And if you can do
Yeah.
that with your authentic self, fantastic. So that was there's two things I want to pick up on that one, because it seemed like you were in, let's call it, the rat race in Dublin, or in London, sorry, and then you came back,
Yeah.
you settled at home, you're like, right, try something else, but you still had that itch of like, you know what, this, I want that thrill nearly, and you went out on your own. But then it obviously the sad passing of your mum, your cancer and COVID. But then you said something like where you did reevaluate to give yourself that space and time to say, is coaching I want? Was that an instant thing where you asked that question yourself, you got it? Or how long did you ponder on that? Or what did you do to realize this is what I love to do? This is what I want to do?
It's very strange, and I can't really explain it to Guy, but from the moment I was diagnosed, I felt a huge responsibility to navigate cancer well. I knew right from the beginning, this is going to be used in some way to help other people. I wasn't quite sure what that was going to look like. I suppose as I finished treatment and started going through the recovery process, I started to think, well, what could that look like? And coaching just wouldn't go away. I was very fortunate to avail of coaching services through Action Cancer and Cancer Focus. Particularly with Cancer Focus, they provide support groups where they use coaching techniques and methodology during um, those groups to help you understand what has happened to you, give yourself that, that grace and that thinking space to understand, right, well, what's for me now. So I think it's been a combination of all of those things um, that made me realize, yeah, that this, I have a lot more substance now behind the coaching. I did before with the business aspect, and I suppose a little bit with some things that had happened in my personal life. Um, but it almost feels like I understand now why I couldn't really get running with the coaching before. It was almost like this is meant to happen so that I could really come from a place of empathy and understanding that I wouldn't have been able to do before. It wouldn't have, the coaching wouldn't have had just as much substance and authenticity because it would have been purely from a business perspective rather than from a whole life, health,
Yeah.
career perspective.
So you sense the exact whole holistic approach whenever you are working with somebody, because not only the transition of a business, they're still a person at the end of the day, and you can understand that as well. So, and I think that it's very powerful sometimes for people even to ask that question and go down. Some people will talk about what they don't want to do rather than going, is this what I want to do? Like I knew myself when I was like sports coaching and I was a young age. And I remember coming home one time, I was in Korean at the stage and I was working with one of the university teams. It's like, I love this. This is what I'm born to do. Now at that stage, I thought I was still the best at that. And I soon realized that I'm still learning every day, but there was something in that. And I kept asking myself questions as well. And even I got to stage too where I was working at the international level in coaching. And it was at that stage where I was like, you know what? This is unbelievable. Looks really good. I'm traveling around Europe. I'm working with these high profile players and athletes. And then I was like, but my passion is working with youth. That's where I believe I'm making the biggest impact. That's where I am. I believe we're all put in this earth to serve, to give. And that's where we're mindful. But the only reason I say that, because some people have that light bulb moment. Some people have that thing. You obviously had to go through all of that to realize, you know what? Even that moment where you said, I know that this cancer is happening, essentially, can I say it, for you, because it helped you realize that I'm going to do good with this. A huge trauma, a huge area in your life that took a lot of energy, but you were able to harness the good from it, really, to say, okay, that goes. And that's very powerful. Do you think that's just that's just me, that's who I am? Or do you kind of respect the fact that you went, you know what, that was quite a good moment?
Really, I think there's two answers to that question. The first is, um, this is not to be judgmental on anybody, but I have a Christian faith, and my faith really got me through a lot of those difficult days and those moments during treatment and recovery. But even prior to that, I would have leaned on my faith a lot to help me get through challenges. And, that might not be for everybody, but for me, that's absolutely how I got through. And I can see many blessings in the challenges and the difficulties. I've got a great deal of gratitude. It's something I never had before. Uh, it was actually a coach I worked with through Action Cancer who helped me identify the process that I went through during that time. And it's a term I had never heard of before. It's called post-traumatic growth. You
Okay.
might have heard of post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, this is something which is kind of like the opposite of that, where you go through a traumatic period or a traumatic event and you come out for the better, you come out very positive, you look at life in a different way, but from a positive perspective, um, which is a fascinating phenomena. I had never heard of that before, but it explains the process and everything I went through very, very well.
I love that. I really like that. I'd say I've never heard that before, but it
Yeah.
just instantly, as soon as you said it, it kind of clicked. And I was like, oh, I like that. I like that because everybody talks about the stress and thing. And yeah, you got to do that, but also there can be. And at 100%, like having that higher purpose, having that belief, having that faith, I think it
Hmm.
is something that a lot of us can lean into, and however you choose, whatever even religion or anything that you follow, or as long as you have that strong sense of purpose and faith that there's a bigger picture here. There's somebody that's laid this out for us, and whatever path that we choose, we're always going to have support. We're always going to be backed up, but there's a reason we're on this path. And I think some people then are reluctant to talk about their Christianity, talk about their faith, but it nearly becomes a voodoo. I think, oh, don't talk about that. It's like, no, but this is who I am. This is a belief. And I think the powerful thing you said there is that's right. You're not trying to force that onto anybody else, but this is what's worked for me. This is what I believe.
Hmm.
This is where I have taken my faith and used it for the power of good for me, my family, my loved ones. Like, I think that it is a very, very powerful statement. I don't think it should ever be overlooked. And if there's people even struggling out there now and whatever faith they have, lean into it a little bit more, just for that, not to solve any problems, just for that guidance, maybe show you
Hmm.
right path. So beautiful, beautiful story so far that had so much there on tragedy and everything now you're moving that into. So, and then the other thing I was talking about, because you're collaborating now a lot with other people, you have a workshop, an event coming up now. Shake It Off, isn't that right? Or Shake Self Doubt. I was thinking, what do you call her there? Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift.
maybe you're collaborating
Maybe.
with her. I don't know. She's married now.
Yeah.
She's a wee bit more free. She's done all that, so she might be coming over and collaborating with you.
Well, she's a wife now. She's going through a transition. Who knows?
That's
Yeah. So one thing through this experience is I have learned that there shouldn't be competition in terms of if someone does something similar to you, yes, okay, technically they are a competitor, but how powerful would it be if you could bring your two backgrounds together? Um, there's a lot more powerful it's a lot more powerful doing that than it is trying to tear each other down. And I met this particular girl for the event I'm talking to you about. We both worked in the same building. We both hired space in the same building. And initially, I saw her as a threat. And I just remember thinking to myself one day, Michelle, catch yourself on, have a chat with a girl. Like, maybe there's an opportunity here. And we really hit it off. She's a mental health nurse by background, and maybe you'll have her on sometime, Gary, because her story in itself is very powerful. She does a little bit of coaching as well. But what we had found was a really common theme and thread through the work that we both did separately was all around confidence, self-doubt, inner critic, particularly with women. Not saying it doesn't happen with men. I work with men and women, but we decided to put together therapy and coaching techniques to deliver this workshop, Shake Self Doubt, which is on the 2nd of October. So it's combining those two modalities, which is very, very unique in order for you to walk away dealing with some things that you maybe didn't realize that were in the back of your mind. That is that inner critic, that voice that you just can't pinpoint, understanding how to silence it and then having clarity about what your next steps are and how to move forward.
And I think that's the one thing as well too. Whenever you are doing that, like for me, competition, it's more like there's abundance. There's enough for everybody out there, so it's not competition; it's collaboration.
Yeah.
With people, and that's exactly what you're doing. So this event that you now are collaborating together, shake off self doubt. What's happening? Where is it? Where can people go? Because I think if people have really connected with you, and this whole thing of know, like, and trust, go along to this and see it, because not only are you going to meet you in person and connect even further, but you'll go away with something. So tell us a little bit about the actual event itself and the date and time and stuff.
Yeah. So we had a look at lots of different venues, and then we went to the Rabbit Hotel and we immediately connected with the vibe. It's quite vibrant and not too stuffy, because sometimes you hear these workshops and either they're really, really hippy dippy, and that's fine if that's what you're into, or it's really power suits, power dressing, very corporate, and can be a bit intimidating. So we wanted like a middle ground, and we really love that venue, and the team there are fantastic. So there will be an opportunity to meet people in the morning, like over nice pastries and things. We'll have a part one, which will be predominantly me supporting Emma and the work that she delivers around what she calls small t traumas. A trauma doesn't have to be cancer or a car accident. It could be, your boss telling you off at work. That can be a trauma that you don't realize you're carrying. Then we'll break for a lovely, beautiful lunch. Again, you'll get chance and opportunity to meet other women that are going through similar things to yourself. And then we'll finish the day with my part two, where Emma's supporting me. And that's all around building on the learnings and the resilience that you've gone through to look at, right, well, what techniques can you put in place now to help you move forward? What's your plan? How can you now take action? Because it's all good and well having the intention. The difference is when you take action, and it's about how you do that. And then for anyone who wants to stick around, we'll be going to the spa afterwards as an add-on, so you can join us in the jacuzzi and
Nice.
decompress of what the day has offered you.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely way to finish it well. But it's only for females, is that correct? Yes.
This particular event is for females. As I
Okay.
said, I do work with men and women, but this particular one is for females.
Yeah, it's nice to niche as well too into that, because then I just keep pure focus rather than bouncing from, they could be in their room. And really good ideas because at the end as well as spa session, because when you go to workshops and you go to these events and stuff, you can go home and it can be too much buzz. It's nearly like a high and I'm going to do this, and this, but to just let it all sink in, take that moment to yourself, because as soon as you leave that, you're probably going to another destination where you're going back to be a mum, a father, catch up on emails and work and everything, just to go, okay, let this sink in and learn. So that's the 2nd of October. And the
Yeah.
tickets, where do you get them?
Yeah, if anyone wants to look me up on Instagram, I'm the Fresh Approach Coach on Instagram. It's in my bio, but there's posts about it, so you get the link there. Or if anyone's got LinkedIn, there's an event on LinkedIn. If you go to my profile, Michelle Jones, Fresh Approach Coaching, you'll find all the details there.
I think we froze there, but we'll get Michelle back in now very soon. So I think you're back now.
Are you there?
You're back now. Yes, we're
Yeah.
winning now. We're winning now. So, but yeah, so it's on your bio. It's there. So, very much worthwhile to go. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, people aren't good at navigating technology. If you find me online somewhere, just send me a direct message and I can send you the link.
Brilliant. Well, that's good. And look, so go along to that as well, too, guys. Try and see if you've heard anything from Michelle. And we're going to continue on just now, probably looking at I suppose a few things might even do in the workshop. So we know you got your own personal experience with this. You set up this business. You got so much knowledge. What if there's somebody out there now who's going through any form of transition, be that with their health, with their marriage, or they're thinking, career change? What are some of the top tips you could give somebody listening right now to help them transition through that?
I think give yourself a break. Don't be so critical or hard on yourself. And if it's a transition that has resulted of something bad or difficult happening, give yourself time to grieve that. It's okay to have a pity party for a day, but don't have it for a week. Don't stay in that place. Like, acknowledge it, address it, deal with it, give yourself the space, but just don't stay there. I think if you allocate yourself that time to have a duvet day or whatever it happens to be, great. Put it all into that time. But the problem is when you repeat that over and over, again, it's all about the intention and action. You might have the intention that you want to make a difference, you want to make a change, you want to do something different. But until you start taking the actions towards doing that, you're just going to be stuck and stay still or move backwards.
Brilliant. So first and foremost, acknowledge that, especially if it's a more challenging or difficult trauma. So you acknowledge you've done that and the action. So is there any other points that you would consider? I know you go into more detail of people who are working with you, but just general to kickstart somebody, what else would you suggest? And you can give an example of a certain like career change, for example.
Okay. So as an example, say it's a career change. Either you have decided to leave a company to change industry or to set up a business, or you've been made redundant, as an example. One of the first things I would do would work with core values. So if you understand what are the values that are core to who you are, then you can start to understand, are you actually operating out of those core values? So a core value, for example, might be, let me think. It might be friends and family. And if you've been operating out of an area where you've not been able to have that time and prioritize friends and family, you're not operating out of that value. So you'll be dissatisfied in whatever it is you're doing because you're not operating out of a core value. So by understanding what your core values are, you can start to address which of those you aren't operating out of. Which ones do you want to, what activities do you want to ramp up? What do you want to do less of?
I'm going
so
to
that
sorry,
you can
Michelle.
make sure that you're
I'm going to stop you there because we had it out. But it just froze again whenever you said core values. So
I
if you
start
want to
again.
just maybe say from core values, so you'd only touched on that. So I was saying like, okay, what are your core values? So what was that? I know a few technical difficulties, but we're all good. I was like one of those moments. It was like a perfect hook because it was like you got to look at your core values, which are. I think so. Brilliant timing, by the way. Brilliant timing. I like that.
I think there's something bigger here, operating guide to
There
kind of
is.
hold your attention. Core values are those values that are core to the person that you are, core to your identity. And if you're not operating out of those core values, you will never be satisfied. You'll be disappointed. You'll never be fulfilled. So a lot of work I do with people who are maybe going through a career change or, something like that would be, first of all, understanding and identifying which core values you've got, and then understanding out of each of those core values how you're operating out of them. So say there's a scale of 1 to 10 of a core value and you're only on a 2, then we start to look at, well, how can you increase that so that you're operating out of that core value? And then once you have that clarity, every decision you make, every choice you take, every step forward or backwards you take, if you look at it out of the lens of your core values, then you'll know what's right and what isn't right for you. It gives you that clarity, gives you that peace of mind and that certainty in your decision making.
Yeah, so it's like the foundation of starting off to then to realize. So you've maybe went through that trauma, you've kind of dealt with it, you've had your pity days, you said don't continue that on. Now focus on you. What are your core values and be that, write them down, go discover. Maybe would you suggest maybe asking somebody else, what do you think my core values are? Because sometimes we don't feel our own core values are there. If somebody says, well, you're really kind, you're caring, you actually do X, Y, and Z.
Other people's opinions can be important, particularly when you respect and trust those people, but they aren't you. Only you know your core values. So yes, it can be helpful to get insight from other people and it actually might help with your confidence. Understanding how other people view you and learning what other people see in you that you don't see in yourself. But only you know your core values because you are unique. Nobody else is you.
Yeah, I think you rightly said there's that confidence because it is a question I would ask a lot sometimes to people, what are your core values? And they become stuck because sometimes they're stuck in their own head or their own mind that they realize, whoa, I haven't actually thought about that. And the reason I'm kind of saying that is because if people listen to this, as soon as you say what are your core values, it can be challenging for people. You take the time to consider what yours are, and break that. Like I asked that question yesterday in another podcast, what are your core values? And the guy just says, caring, because it connects everything. I was like, perfect. So,
Hmm.
his was one word. That was it.
Yeah.
Because if I care for what I do. I care for other people. I care. That's my core value. I was like, fantastic. And that's the way he lives everything around what he's doing is that he cares. So, it can be a lot, can be challenging for some people. So you've went through that trauma, you've got your core values. Is there anything then now? So I've got my core value. What would you suggest then? Because you're big on action taken. What's the
Mhm.
next step? Does that give you more clarity? Should that come, or what would you suggest?
I don't think it's a linear line. You know, these can all happen at different times, and these are just suggestions of some of the things that you might do to help you. Um, but really, I think I know Gary, we had talked about this previously. But look at your habits and do something called habit stacking, and it could be really simple things like the first thing you do when you get up in the morning is have a glass of water, not look at your phone. Or it could be getting outside if you're lucky enough to have a garden and putting your feet on the grass. It could be as simple as starting to give up things like, say, you vape, can you start giving that up? Things that you could stop doing. And the thing with habits is that it takes 30 days to make a habit or break a habit, and repetition is really important. So it's something that you need to continually do. But I would say, someone listening might hear all of these things and be really overwhelmed and go, oh my goodness, where do I start? I would start with just one thing. What is the one thing that can make a difference that is doable, that's realistic, one thing that you can start to do or stop doing and then go from there.
Brilliant. Yeah. And it's beautiful because everything you're talking about here, there's nobody else involved. It starts with you. You're going through your own challenge. You have to have support with other people around you, but it's you. You're the one making the decision. You're the one looking at your core values. You're the one potentially looking at where you nearly want to go or to be, and be that an exciting thing. It should scare the living daylight out of you as well, like 100%, because we want to be challenged. But then what you're doing is you're breaking that back. Like I was working with a girl there, we were talking about like a 12-3-1. So it's like, here's your year, here's your quarter, here's your month. So it's like yearly goals, quarterly to here, weekly wins, monthly milestones. All of this was broke down where it was like, oh, all I have to do is do this today because that takes me to that. So like you
Hmm.
said, I love the book I read. It was sorry, we give a speech as well too on YouTube. I wrote a book about it. Is first thing you do in the morning is make your bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like I think it was a colonel. He was addressing a college, I think, at that stage. But he wrote a book about it, and that's what it was. Because no matter if you get up in the morning and you make that bed and you make that to your level of a high standard, which is yours, then when you return that day, you're coming home to your made bed. And you
Yeah.
talk
It's
about
not
gratitude and thankfulness and everything as well. So
Yeah, it's having that sense of achievement, but it has to be realistic. You know, I'm not going to be this big boss babe that is like the next Tony Robbins. That's not realistic for me. But what I do know is that I can make a difference to individuals and collaborate with others to make a difference through workshops and things like that. And for me, it's not about power or status or money. It's about making a difference and sharing my lived experience to help improve the life of somebody else. And I think if you have that clarity of what it is you're trying to achieve, then that's what informs everything that you do, because it just seeps in to every decision, every thought. Like you talked about someone that you had spoken to in another podcast about their core value, and it would probably be no surprise. My top core value is gratitude. Never used to be, but going through a big change changed me and who I am as a person. So that informs everything that I do.
Yeah, it's huge. And that's the thing with when you're looking at your core value, when you're looking at your goals and your habits, we're constantly evolving and everything around it evolves too. Because at the start you may think, oh, I want to be there to serve, but also have you had a goal with your family? Have you have ideas what you want to do? Because if you want to go and have 3 or 4 holidays to make memories, to share, to have time to take your child to school, to come back, those are things then that start building you up towards, well, this is why I'm doing my business as well and giving to others.
Hmm.
But the first person I'm going to give to is myself and my family.
Hmm.
I would always suggest people whenever they're looking at their calendar, the first thing you put in is your time. Your
Hmm.
time. And I know you're big on that as well. You put out another post up the other day about treating yourself. And I think last Friday, when's the last time you treated yourself? And it is something like, would you encourage that? Would you say, it's a non-negotiable to a certain degree, or put it in sporadically?
Depends on the person. So anyone who's like me, who's got a young child, any spare money you get, you probably spend it on the child. And, my child has enough clothes. She doesn't need anything else. When was the last time that I went and got myself a bunch of flowers just because? And you might think, oh, it's so wasteful because they die, but it's about living in the moment sometimes. I'm not saying don't take responsibility seriously, like be sensible, but at the same time, you have to give yourself a break. And rewarding yourself might even be half an hour walk away from anybody, any noise, any responsibilities, you know, just taking that time out. It doesn't always have to be something that costs money by treating yourself. So again, everybody is different, and treat to one person might be something physical, or treat to somebody else might be just headspace to think without any interruptions.
Yeah, yeah, and but again, it comes back to that one thing, and that's you. And I think throughout this podcast, that's the big message, that when you're working with somebody individually, it starts with yourself, and then you can build out from there. And that's something that I feel that some people find it challenging. They're there, especially those people who are always caring for others. I know the guy in the other podcast, Jason, was saying about caring, and he's clued in, because the first person you got to care for is yourself,
Hmm.
and then be able to give that out. So, absolutely huge, because then that means now that you've kind of gone from that thing where you've had your trauma or you're going through your transition, you give yourself your time to accept it. You use 3 things there. What was it? Accept it, review it, and action. I can't remember
Hmm.
actually. Sorry for butchering it, but you said 3 things. I can't remember. It was just flowed off really well. And then you're looking at your habits, and then find your purpose, and then looking at your habits, your core values. And it, would you say, is that the foundation? This a good start? I know everybody's different. I know people could take it there, but in terms of looking at it like a principle setup, that's a good
Hmm.
solid foundation. Would that be right?
Yeah, it's like that, wise old saying, whoever invented it, you've got to fit your own oxygen mask first before you can help somebody else. And maybe helping other people isn't what you want to do. Maybe it's something totally different. Um, but once you have been able to acknowledge where you've come from, address where you are right now, and be really clear about who you are, what you stand for, why are you here on this earth, then the world is your oyster. If you're really walking into your true purpose and your true calling, whatever that looks like, it'll come easy to you. Not saying that you won't have to work hard, you absolutely will. Particularly if you're wanting to start a new business, it's really challenging. It's not for the faint-hearted. But if that's your true purpose, you will find things will come to you, because you are where you're meant to be. And again, that might sound really abstract, but it's 100% true. I'm making breakthroughs in my business now that I wasn't making before I went through this big journey. And that's because it wasn't the right timing for me. I wasn't clear about who I was, what I was about, what my purpose was. But now I absolutely am. I have full clarity on that. And when you have that clarity, then you know exactly where you're headed and what you need to do.
Yeah, brilliant. And for anybody that is listening, going, "Oh, when do I find that out?" And like, it will come. And I think the good thing, you wouldn't know the amount of clarity you had if you hadn't done anything previous in the past. Everything happens. So everything is happening for a reason. I always use saying to you, like, you're exactly where you're meant to be. In this moment, in this time, you're exactly where you're meant to be. And another thing I use in my business with my team is what we're doing is brilliant, but there's a better way. And that excites me. That's not to put anything down. That's not to say, okay, we need to do this better. There's a better way. There's a way of ease, flow, and joy. There's a way of path of least resistance. And maybe when we step back and reevaluate, we start to see that more, a bit like what you did, and that was probably to cement that you're doing is really well. I love this. I'm really good at it. But then it gave you that sense of, okay, now I'm going. Now I'm ready here. The train's going. If you guys aren't on, that's fine. I'll pick you up along the way if you want, but I'm going this way. So I think it's really powerful what you're doing, because you haven't read it from a textbook. You have read it from a textbook in terms of you've upskilled yourself, but it's come from a lot of lived experiences. And I think there will be a lot of people who listen to this will resonate with that in some way. Not exactly everybody's journey is different, but will go, oh, I get what she's saying. And I'm here right now. And thank you, Michelle, for sharing that. So that's going to help a lot of people. Look, I will finish with a few quick fire questions, or if there's anything you wanted to add on to that, or
No, I think it's been an absolute pleasure having the opportunity to share my story, really.
yeah, a beautiful story, and I mean that sincerely, like, because there's tragedy in there. There's a lot of challenges, but how you approached it, and you didn't turn around and say, look, it's easy. And you said at the start, like, I've dealt with it, and it may come across that I wasn't empathetic towards it or emotional towards it, but that's a lot of work you've done there. So credit to you for that. And now you're actually using that skill to help others, which is brilliant. So hopefully somebody's listening to this, and not hopefully, but I know somebody listening to this will need to hear this and will reach out to you, and you'll be there to support and serve them as well. So I am going to go in there quick fire questions. And the first one up is, what are your core values and why?
Gosh, funnily enough, I don't know them off the top of my head because my mind's gone blank and put on the spot. But what I will say is, for anyone who's trying to figure them out, there's loads of tools online. And what I would say, my number one value is gratitude. It wasn't always that, because I've changed as a person. But I would say integrity is another big one for me. That's very evident in the investment I have made in my own certification process for coaching, because of the responsibility that I feel when I am working with others. I don't take that for granted. I think that's very important. Friends and family would be a big one, and that's what got me through, some of the hardest challenges and pitfalls in my life. What was that, 3? Can I think of 4 and 5? So what we've got friends and family, integrity, gratitude. I'm sure there's lots of other good ones I can't think off the top of my head.
Oh, that's more enough. And again, like, can be 1, can be 10. I believe my own personal opinion is probably the less you can actually bring into one and it's easier to live by that. Like, one of my big ones, I think, as I evolved even in my own coaching with children and stuff, was empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy was huge for me, because I remember I used to be coaching kids, and I would nearly turn around, and if the behaviour was poor, and be like, oh, it must be the parents, because that's the way I was brought up, my self-belief. It's always the parents. But empathising with, first of all, that child who may have been neurodiverse, may have been going through challenge, but I don't know where they came from. I don't know if the parent could have been a single parent, could have been a parent working 2 or 3 jobs, could have had their own trauma, and empathizing with that, and then give me a better understanding of the child, of the situation. And then it came to, how can I help? What can I do to there? So yeah, and that was a big one I kind of live a lot by. And the other one, the core value we would have them too, but with core kids a lot, is positive experiences. That's everything that company is built on, is positive experiences. and that be from a parent booking onto our system to a child coming to a parent receiving them back to with the school, with whatever, with my team, with my coaches. Is it a positive experience, and how can we provide more of them? So, yeah, and it's just, that's what I mean. It can be, but two similar people in terms of we believe we're here to serve, to help people. We have different core values. There's no right or wrong, but they're yours and they're mine, and we're there to implement them. So I think that's beautiful as well. A book recommendation. What would you recommend? Just anything maybe that influenced your life, business related, anything at all.
Can I make 3 book recommendations?
You make as many as you want, because when somebody needs to hear at least one of them.
Sure. So if you like the idea of having space to think, I would recommend a book which has totally gone out of my head. Totally gone out of my head. Book about thinking. I can't remember the name, but now, isn't that funny? Ironic. If you're going through challenges with career, there's a book called The Squiggly Career,
Okay.
which is really, really good. It gives you lots of tips and advice and techniques of how to figure out where you fit in a job, in a business, or go and set up your own thing. And the third book, I suppose, would be around. I think it's called the Body Knows the Score, or The Body Holds the Score.
Yeah.
I haven't read it for a good while.
I think I have.
But have you got that book?
Of both of them there, because somebody was talking about that the other day. So there's one. Is it Louise Hay is one of them, I think, and oh yeah. So these are Your Body Speaks Your Mind is one. Or You Can Heal Your Life, and I think I have The Body Knows the Score. It's very interesting, those books. Wherever you says you're holding trauma and stuff, I actually like reading it, because you can use them as a little bit of a what would you call, like a dictionary nearly, or whatever, like, so you can just read and see where you're feeling the pain. So yeah, very, very powerful books as well.
I've just had a quick look to see what the book is. And it's a Nancy Klein book, The Thinking Environment.
Okay.
You get to a certain age, and I'm sure a lot of your female listeners will understand, when you start to get towards the mid-40s, words evaporate. And you know what? Let's normalize that. That's totally normal.
Yeah, see, just I butchered. That was a good to say. I called it transition at the very, very start. What was that book called? The Thinking
Environment, Nancy Klein.
Thinking Environment. Very good. And that's good. And I'll give you one more. If you had a magic wand and would like to change one thing, what would it be and why?
And I get a bit of context around what it is that the parameters of that magic wand.
It's anything. It's your magic wand. It could be business, personal, life, anything. First thing comes to your mind.
I would love people to be taught this stuff, as just everyday things. Like, you have to breathe to live. We don't get taught how to breathe in a way that helps regulate our nervous system. I just wish that was something that we were taught. Even at school, it was skills that we were given. And it's funny, actually, my little girl is just about to start preschool. She is in daycare some of the week. And she does come home and has started to learn some of these techniques of how to breathe to calm herself down. And I wish I had been taught that at school, instead of going through 40 years of my life and not knowing that this was available. So I suppose if I had a magic wand, I could change anything. It would just be that we're taught from a young age the tools and techniques of how to regulate our nervous system and our emotions.
Brilliant. Yeah. And it's a very powerful one as well. It's not putting a sticky plaster over anything. It's actually giving you the whole medical kit to try and see these also. Brilliant. And you'd mentioned, I don't know if you had mentioned it again, but it's gone for me anyway, the lady you're collaborating with for the talk.
Yes.
Because I want to give her a shout out and see maybe she comes on the podcast. What was her name again?
So it's Emma Pringle, and her business is Cherry Tree Therapy and Coaching. Emma is a lovely girl. She does a lot of trauma work, also a lot of work with disordered eating, but she's got a lot of strings to her bow. I'd highly recommend her if there's a trauma or something like that you you would like some support with.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing. More importantly, really, really powerful. I just took a lot from it, and I can see how you're using your life experience and everything you've learned to help and serve others. So, thank you so much for your time. And if anybody does, make sure and reach out to Michelle at Fresh Approach Coaching and join her new workshop coming up on the 2nd of October. Shake Self Doubt. So, guys, thank you so much for listening, and we shall see you all soon.
Thanks.